If stoner movies didn't mean movies about smoking weed, but instead movies that are fucking amazing to watch while you're high, what are your favorites?
I had a professor in film school who told us that the only way to watch 2001, A Space Odyssey was to go to a theater, get really high, and then lay down in front of the first row so you're looking almost straight up along the screen surface. The Muppets Movie Original. My girlfriend at the time and I randomly put it on while smoking and it was fucking fantastic. Everything from the songs to the crazy-ass plot and all the old stars, plus that particular kind of pun-based, slapstick comedy that the Muppets do is just fantastic while stoned. Tangled is shockingly good while stoned. The artists originally wanted to make the whole film look like watercolors and wound up dialing it way back in the final product. I've watched it a couple of times and was just blown away by the detail and the art. It's also Disney, so it doesn't fuck with my anxiety too much. Bonus, it's even better on mushrooms. My friend and I sat in my cave of a living room on shrooms and watched a bunch of Disney animated movies for hours. It was fantastic, no one was allowed in our cave, and we had the best time. We watched My Neighbor Totoro, Ponyo, Coco, definitely the best visuals, Alice in Wonderland, Tangled, and WALL-E. I feel like I'm missing one or two, but it was a great movie lineup. Such an amazing movie even when sober. You just have to ignore the scenes with the kid and the monkey. Everything else is amazing. The races are genuinely interesting, and the car gadgets never feel stale. John Goodman kills it, obviously. And the ending really nails the feeling from the beginning with Speed feeling too unworthy to beat his dead brother's best time on the practice course. Inception. The visuals and the soundtrack are absolutely amazing, and if you've seen it before and know the story, then you don't need to focus on the little details, just enjoy the epic scenes and soundtrack. One of my best friends in college once found me tripping my ever-loving balls off talking to a stack of cardboard boxes in my living room. We had discussed a few weeks earlier that I had never actually seen the wall. "You stay right here. I'll be right back," he told me. 600 years after the boxes and I unlocked the secret meaning of existence, he came back with a DVD and I watched the wall while never truly realizing what it actually was. It was a beautiful and terrifying experience that actually changed the trajectory of my life. You see, I was pre-med up until that point, but that experience illuminated a lot of unhealthy cycles in my existence, so I changed gears. 20 years later I give hand jobs for crack behind my local CVS. John dies at the end would be a contender for me. Edited to add. I was going to add a link to the trailer, but it doesn't really show you just how bizarre and funny this film is, so here's a scene from it instead. I took a waterfall geeb hit when I first started smoking. My friends and I watched this movie and it messed with my head. Easily the craziest experience I've ever had while watching a movie. Also, the whole movie is pretty much about getting high. The movie is great sober too. Oh man. Interstellar, Oblivion, Outlaw King, Blade Runner 2077, WALL-E, Inception, Tron Legacy, Sunshine, Steve Jobs, Fury, The First Transformers, Midway, 300, The Dark Knight, Arrival, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Predestination, Ad Astra, Sucker Punch, Gladiator, especially the extended cut. I never understand why so many people hate Tron Legacy, it's so good. Maybe BC it's not quite a direct sequel story-wise from the original IDK. Even the soundtrack alone is amazing, stoned or not. By the way, the animated Tron Uprising is really good too. And I say that as an adult, it's not aimed primarily at kids, prob older teens and up. Jesus dude, you're brave. I love Fury, but to watch it while high? That scene where the tank commander's on fire and can't climb out of the tank so he just shoots himself. Yeah, I can't do that stoned. Arrival was the biggest surprise of a movie I've ever seen. Didn't know anything about it going in, and it blew me away. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I adore it, and I cannot recommend it enough. I'm glad someone else out there thinks that Sunshine is a good stoner flick. Really, almost anything Alex Garland is involved with is great to watch in that state. It's great, honestly. Visually spectacular, bit of a thinker, and that incredible John Murphy soundtrack all layer very well. To be honest, any Danny Boyle film is worth a watch, and Sunshine and Steve Jobs are particularly enjoyable stoned. Paris, Texas. It's just so peaceful, just loads of footage of the American landscape and awesome slide guitar music. It was always my go-to the day after a heavy night and no sleep. Movies about smoking weed are always low-key anti-weed. Movies that secretly max out your trip or high? Holy shit. I watched The Matrix after smoking high-grade hydro for the first time. I hit the living Jesus out of that pipe, as instructed, and walked into the Matrix barely able to walk down the movie theater walkway. I was so disoriented that I had to stare at the little strip of enclosed lights that keep you guided the whole time, hunched over like some sort of elephant man. All my friends laughed and called me over, and fortunately I hadn't peaked yet. Started the movie, and I mentally got lost in the movie to the point the movie was more real than the world around me. Right around the point Morpheus is spinning us up as nothing more than a production unit, and how knowledge of that role gives us power over this dimension, I started to believe, as well as come back to reality. 10 out of 10 would recommend. There's a subtle hint involving a white rabbit about the Matrix and drug use. Then there's the far less subtle Morpheus handing out forbidden snacks. So perhaps it was a druggy movie, but it wasn't the plot like some half-baked crap movies I could name. Me and everyone on the old mud servers, which are still up by the way, thought that shit was the greatest fucking movie ever made. I'm old now. Enter the Void, Cloud Atlas, Pan's Labyrinth, Gravity, Avatar, King Kong, Titanic, Tron, Legacy, The Thing, Life of Pi, Mad Max, Fury Road, Amelie, Hereditary. And anything animated. I recommend the entire How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, and Spirited Away. I skipped first period in school one day back in high school, and me and another guy went out and got high. Came back for second period, which was film class, and we were watching Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 classic, Psycho. And still today, almost 40 years later, I still think that was an awesome movie to watch stoned. Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Talk about an existential trip with fantastic graphics. I never felt more meaningless in the grand scheme of things in the best possible sense of the words, ha ha ha. Coraline is another great one. The Other Mother just hits different when you're stoned. Anything by Jim Henson too. Movies to me become so fake and transparent and silly when I watch them high. All I see are adults on screen just blatantly pretending, and it becomes absurd. So I like watching intense sci-fi or action movies. Vanilla Sky, an older, less well-known movie starring Tom Cruise. It's the weirdest movie I ever saw. A lot of different themes, but if you're after weird. Swiss Army Man, Primer, Oldboy. Original is much better than American. Tusk, Perfume. Story of a Murderer, Cube. Inherent Vice, Pan's Labyrinth. Time Crimes, American Psycho. The Feast Movies, The Fountain, Gummo. Fair Warning. Fucking Disturbing, A Scanner Darkly, or pretty much anything based on Philip K. Dick material. Kids movies in general from the 80s, Time Bandits, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, Never Ending Story, etc. The Cube trilogy is pretty great. Eraserhead, Videodrome, Blue Velvet, Bad Boy Bubby, Barton Fink, The Machinist, Memento, hell, even the animated James and the Giant Peach is fucking bananas. Edit. Fuck, how'd I forget the VHS trilogy? I went on a 3-month-long stint of getting high as fuck and watching bizarre movies back in 0910. My recommendation is that you turn your life around. Marijuana is illegal, my friend, and has several serious side effects such as increased appetite, improved sense of creativity, laughter, short-term memory loss, and increased appetite. Marijuana is illegal, my friend, not everywhere, my friend. More and more places are legalizing it for recreational use, and selling it in stores now, not CBD, but actual marijuana. This doesn't mean you are allowed to drive or go to work stoned. All the same restriction you have with alcohol are also in place with marijuana where it's legal. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've been watching that movie since I was a kid, but then I watched it in lockdown while I was stoned. Trust me, I've never enjoyed anything movie in my life. I can't describe how good it was. I'd just leave it to you for watch. Annihilation. I've seen sober too. But first time with all the beautiful imagery and darkness in it, I was blown away. Has become one of my favorite movies. Also on my list, Deadpool Bubba Ho-Tep Rocky Horror Picture Show Starship Troopers Phantom of the Paradise. Oh brother, where art thou? Everything about it is amazing. The acting, the cinematography, which takes full advantage of the beautiful setting, the writing, the direction. The soundtrack is just fantastic, and listening to it stoned for the first time was like watching the heavens open up and hear angels in the choir singing. It's one of the most perfect movies ever made. Emo. Gotta be The Prestige. It's an interesting movie in its own right. But it's about magicians at the turn to the century. Sleight of hand is literally a core theme of the movie. Me and a buddy got stoned, watched that. Discussed it after. We're both so convinced that the other was too stoned and didn't understand it, that we smoked up again and put it back to the beginning to prove the other wrong. You can probably see a vicious circle in our reasoning. But I would highly recommend it. Depends what you're after. If you want eye-popping visuals, Marvel movies are always good, especially Doctor Strange. I love the live-action version of Ghost in the Shell for its aesthetic. If you want your wig flipped, Primer is a must, and I really enjoyed The Endless. Both are left-of-center sci-fi-ish movies, set in the here and now. For good fun that I really enjoyed, while bake safety not guaranteed, is worth a watch. Yellow Submarine. This is hands down the best movie to watch stoned. If you haven't listened to the Beatles, it's a fascinating intro to some of their more far-out music, Northern Song, etc. Furthermore, the jokes and visual gags are unbelievably deep and well thought out, while also maintaining a lowbrow stoner comedy sense. Watching this film on edibles was a religious experience. And to quote George in the film, it's all in the mind. The era of old school, Anchorman, Pineapple Express, Road Trip, How High was a golden time in my stoner times. Then other ones like Shaun of the Dead and A Scanner Darkly were the types of movies we would also watch. Some I've enjoyed recently: Pan's Labyrinth, Knives Out, Barry Lyndon, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Heat, Extended Edition, Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, Star Wars, Rogue One. Whatever you do, please do not rewatch The Passion of the Christ for the first time since you were a young teen trying not to make it obvious you're coming down from an acid trip beside your very Catholic mother. For legal reasons, this is a hypothetical scenario. Inception. Life of Pi is amazing to watch while high, some of the most vivid imagery in a movie. Waiting. A movie about restaurant workers that is spot fucking on and hilarious. And you can throw any Marvel movie on when I'm smacked and I'ma have a good time. Personally, I like those movies that build up in a kind of slow boil. Like 2001, A Space Odyssey, or There Will Be Blood. Watched Django Unchained the other day and it has a similar slow pacing. Though the gore, near the end, was too much. I wasn't disturbed by it, just didn't like how fake and over the top it was. When I was new to getting high, I got especially baked while my friend figured out what to watch. He gets very excited and tells me I'm lucky to be so high and puts on a movie called The Pest. Ridiculous movie all around, and I loved it. Closest I've seen to a live-action cartoon. I don't know if you guys like international movies, but here are some of my favorites. Alla Vaikunthapur Ramulo, South India, Monmarzia, Bollywood, Bangastan, Bollywood, Fear Hera Fairy, Bollywood, Fakre 2, Bollywood, Bogambog, Bollywood, Hater, Indian version of Hamlet, Serious One in the list. Kung Fury. Watched it with a friend without being high and it was just the funniest shit ever. Somehow we managed to insert so many inside jokes during it. It was just great. Can't begin to imagine what it would be watching it stoned. The Sorcerer and the White Snake. Happened upon it after a night of drinking and smoking with 3 of my buddies, and we were absolutely bewildered by how amazingly weird it was. Shitty lip-syncing combined with a final battle between a gigantic Guanyin Buddha and a humongous white snake, all in beautiful 2011 CGI, makes it quite the experience. Fantasia, the first one. I saw it in the theater when it was re-released in the 80s, on acid, high AF. It was a life-changing experience. The Hobbit, because the only way to enjoy that abortion is while off your tits. Look, the dragon has a pool of melted gold. Ha 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 ha. I have some thoughts on the matter, in no particular order and at the risk of repeating some of what others have said. Fantasia 2000 Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Speed Racer Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse Genius Party Beyond Sucker Punch Trolls World Tour Waking Life Dread Across the Universe Yellow Submarine Moulin Rouge Moana Coco Aladdin The Lego Movie Mind Game Metropolis the anime version, Loving Vincent, Beautiful but a Downer, Redline Rock and Rule Boy and the World People mentioning Samsara and Koyaanisqatsi. I would also add Chronos, though Samsara and Chronos share many of the same locations, so be warned. Planet Earth 2. The Big Lebowski is a good one. The main character smokes weed, but the movie is never about that, it's just part of his character. Annihilation is technically a horror movie, so it'll depend on the individual and whether or not you're into that sort of thing, but it's a great movie to get you thinking. It's the kind of movie where the metaphors aren't necessarily simple, but they're dense, and worn on the movie's sleeves. Barbarella. The fact that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever and just goes aimlessly from bizarre scene to scene doesn't bother you when you're high. The visual design of it is novel, and includes all these weird details. Also, a young Jane Fonda is naked in an awful lot of the movie. It's a surreal 1960s sci-fi comedy that's got a lot of sex in it. If that would appeal to you when you're stoned, it's worth a watch. So many have already been mentioned, so I'll name one I haven't seen mentioned so far. Shutter Island. I saw it in theaters when it came out, but I watched it again a few years ago while super stoned, and even though I knew the plot and the ending, I felt as if I was watching it for the very first time. I was so on the edge of my seat, and every twist and turn fucked my head up in the absolute best way. So intense. Matrix and Inception. Great with weed, better with LSD. Interstellar 2, really any Chris Nolan movie. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind if you wanna cry. Stranger Than Fiction. V for Vendetta if you wanna feel empowered. Any of the old Monty Python TV series or movies. You have to still include Pineapple Express, Up in Smoke, and Half-Baked as those are funny as hell anyway. Airplane. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The OG Star Wars trilogy on acid, or if you have a low weed tolerance, The Return of the Jedi. Artists loved acid lol, and you can see Carrie's coke nail in the movie lol. Train Spotting so you don't get tempted to do heroin. Horse Girl. Bandersnatch, follow Colin. I watched John Wick on Molly, which was surprisingly awesome for that. Never wanted to see a character get his revenge so bad I maybe never felt as sorry for someone on screen, cause the movie and the drugs lol. Yellow Submarine. The Beatles voiced the animation and it's about them saving the universe with their music and it's trippy as fuck. I mean, it has a little getting high in it, but it's not the focus. Grandma's Boy is my favorite stoner movie cause of that scene where he makes the plate of leftovers. I watch that just to get inspiration for my munchies. But the hyper-focus I get watching it stoned is a great experience. There's so many hilarious details I miss otherwise. Monty Python. My friends and I all watched it one day, and since some were stoners, they got high. One friend, who I was dating then, got too high, and while watching Monty Python, he laughed so hard. I never saw him laugh that hard, ever. What was even greater was the scenes he laughed that hard. It wasn't really any funny scenes, just normal, well, normal, in the movie, nothing big going on, scenes that no one else was laughing at. Not planning on drugs, but if I ever get high, I'm watching that movie. Pink Floyd. The Wall. Also, a show every stoner should watch, The Midnight Gospel on Netflix. A guy takes audio clips from his podcast where he talks about philosophical, space stuff and has mesmerizing animation over it. The conversations have nothing to do with what's happening on screen, but just trust me, watch 5 minutes of the first episode and you'll be hooked. The quick answer would be anything Terry Gilliam has produced. They're all wonderful and fanciful and visually stunning. I'd also say basically all of the films made by Jim Jarmusch. They are very leisurely paced with very simple plot lines, and gorgeously filmed. And I guess since I'm just name-dropping directors, I should also add that the Coen brothers' output are masterpieces that will likely entertain any stoner. Mary Poppins, The Fifth Element, The Wall, Altered States, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street, Fantasia, Edit to Add, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Gods, how could I have forgotten that one? The Heavy Metal Movie. I'm pretty sure I could come up with more, if I thought about it, but these came off the top of my head. Try, 2001, A Space Odyssey, and 2010, The Year We Make Contact. For a real treat, try peaking on acid while watching the chase scene in the old and not well-aged 1984 film, To Live and Die in L.A. It's old and maybe not great, but in the proper state of mind, fully focused on a big screen. It's something else. A lot of people might call me a weeb, but try some anime like My Hero Academia, Konosuba, or even go for some nostalgia and check out Naruto. When I started smoking was about the time I started watching anime, and at a certain point in watching One Piece, I had to turn it from English to Japanese cause I ran out of English episodes. At first I was hardcore against subs cause I hated reading, then I got high and listened to it while watching it. Crazy, right? And everything just clicked for me. It sounded badass and everything was 1000x more interesting, plus the world building and plot for some anime can be highly complex in a good way, like One Piece or My Hero Academia. Watching Naruto while high was extremely memorable, cause I realized exactly how serious the situation was for the main characters. By episode 3 of 4, shit gets incredibly intense. I didn't even remember that. TLDR, give anime a chance. This may sound weird, but sometimes I like watching stuff that's not what you would guess would be your good getting high movie. When I'm high I get experimental and branch out of my comfort zone in order to pleasantly surprise myself. Doesn't always work out, but the last time tried this it went well. I watched the 1964 version of Beckett starring Richard Burton. Overall the movie was just okay. The only thing I didn't like about it was the ending. But I think that had to do with it being lost in translation from the original play to film. However, there was a great scene in it that came up while my high was peaking. The scene was when Beckett was being consecrated as Archbishop in a ceremony while a Gregorian chant was being sung. I don't know what that scene made me feel. It was a mix of fear, awe, and wonderment. Something felt so oddly familiar about that scene, like it resonated within me down to my genetic code. I'll never forget it. Inception is a mindfuck however you choose to watch it. In an altered state or not. Other options are the greatest hand-drawn animated movies ever. Heavy metal and American pop. The soundtracks are perfect and John Candy and Harold Ramis' voice portrayals in heavy metal are timeless. Anyone got any plutonium Niborg? The Fantasias and Doctor Strange would be absolutely fantastic. While recovering from surgery and taking the really good painkillers, I've always ended up putting on things like the hospital music channel that has the soothing images, because anything else really fucks me up. The Swan Princess as a kid on something after surgery taught me that. Cats, 98, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and Jesus Christ Superstar, 73/74-ish are beyond words trippy.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And if you are new, subscribe and click on the bell icon.